once again, the people on the payroll clap the loudest. Very good. It's kind of is what it is, just the way it works. They also, if you've not been a boss or a CEO, what you'll find out over time is that people find your jokes just a little bit funnier when you have a title. For example, was well done. Oh well, one of the perks. Listen, I'm excited to introduce this next session as some of the most pivotal work that MMA has been doing around growth framework. So if I could see you, I would ask for a show of hands, so just maybe answer yourself inside. How many of you feel like you know the 3 main growth frameworks in the world? My guess is not many of you. And Vasilis at the MMA has done research for us that indicates that there's not clarity on growth frameworks. And in fact, what we found too often is that the senior exec CMO maybe will believe in a certain particular growth framework, and others in the organization have a different view of how the world works. So this is one of the inconsistencies that MMA has really tried to put a lot of energy and effort in trying to understand growth frameworks. They are crucial. It'd be a little bit like being a doctor and not knowing anatomy. It's that fundamental to the business. And we do hear a lot of, dare I say, bullshit made up by marketers about what they think works and what they think matters. And so many of us is erroneously wrong. And again, if you've heard anything I've said already at Possible, it's really around trying to sort of uncover those issues and find clarity that we as marketers are better, stronger. So what you're going to hear today is some examples with a couple of marketers who've actually worked on this. It's called the Movable Middles Growth Framework. It was created about 3 years ago when a gentleman named Norm DeGrev, who's now the CMO GM, he was CMO at CVS, he called me, asked if Joel and I would stay after a board meeting and talk to him about some strategy he was hearing from his team. And his basic thesis was that CVS at the time was very focused on a reach strategy. And reach is a very bad idea. If you learn nothing else today, reach doesn't work. It's not about trying to get those who are not common buyers into the movable sector. That has no mathematical support for it, and you'll hear some of that today. And so what happened is Norm says, here's what we're doing. Joel, who used to be the chief research officer of the ARF, he says, Norm, you're right. You guys are wrong. And I wrote a paper about this in 2017, and it really focused on this concept of, you know, responsive to ads sort of thematic. I'll let Joel sort of explain it better. So this group here, Vizon, who's at Kroger's, if you don't know, runs media them, is probably one of the greatest board members we have in actually really doing things. She's not too busy to do better. She fixates on trying to do everything the MMA has. And then Michelle Alfano from Ally has also been deeply involved in the brand's performance work, which has led to Movable Middles growth framework. So with that, Joel Rubinson, he's his own firm now, but again, former chief research officer there. ARF, go take it away, everyone. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. Hopefully everybody has their I'm not too busy to do better buttons. That's what we're going to talk about today is how the Movable Middle growth framework can really not only help tremendously with short-term results, but also with long-term results. And this is data that's never been presented before, just recently shared, fresh stuff. So first of all, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Movable Middle framework, it uses a different organizing principle for how to think about consumers and where you want to concentrate your advertising. It's not based on heaviness of buying. It's not based on demographics. It's not based on attitudinal segmentation. It is based on segmenting people based on the probability that they will choose your brand given that they make a category purchase. And in particular, those who have between a 20 to 80% probability of choosing your brand are called movable middles. And you can see they're a smaller but very mighty group because their responsiveness across all of our testing is that they have never been less than twice as responsive to advertising, and they've been as high as 23 times as responsive to advertising. In fact, these are the case studies that we've already been showing, and you see Reckitt, which was Enfamil, had the lowest, but Enfamil's a very big brand, and that was already 2.2x in terms of how movable middles responded to marketing. And then all the way up on the right, we see the numbers have gotten as high as 23x. That's not 23%. That is 23 times more responsive to advertising. And we're lucky to have Michelle with us here from Ally, who can talk about that more. But you see there's a column there that's blanked out. So although So far, it looks like we're batting 1,000. We're still batting 1,000 because we just got results from Campbell's, an iconic brand. So you almost might think, well, a brand like that should just advertise to everybody. No, even Campbell's should look, Campbell's Red and White, the condensed soup, should look for its movable middle, which was 3 times more responsive to advertising. Again, not 3%, 3 times. So, taking that information, we said, okay, how do we turn that into a media plan? How do we operationalize that? So TransUnion, who worked with us on the Ally study, took the data even further. And I'm going to show you what they did. Very inventive work, but really the idea is anybody can do this. So they reanalyzed the data, and I'm sorry, it was the wrong slide was in the deck, so I'm going to have to explain it a little bit more. Basically, what they did was the movable middle was classified by survey data. So we had 10,000 survey respondents, but who were all onboarded to the TransUnion backbone, okay? So they took the movable middles out, they used them as a seed sample, and they profiled their 16 preset audiences, which are based on demographics and life stage, and they said, oh, let's find those audiences that have, for whatever reason, a really high incidence of movable middles, and let's see how they did. How did those audiences do, okay? So they took those audiences, and they had integrated, and this is, you know, their backbone is huge. It's in well over 100 million IDs. They took ad serving information, they took their continuous CRM feed from Ally, and they did a lift study, audience by audience. And they said, okay, so how did the movable middle audiences actually do? Okay? This is how they did. They identified 2 movable middle audiences, one that was younger, one that was older, versus broad reach, meaning what if you just, as my friend Vass here says, spread it like peanut butter everywhere, versus a broad reach plan, which we index at 100. How did the movable middle audiences perform in terms of incrementality in response to advertising? It was between 2 to 2.6 times greater in terms of account openings during the campaign. 2 to 2.6. That is a huge lift in productivity for your advertising, but in a way, that's just the appetizer. The main course here is that when you target audiences based on movable middles, there is a carryover effect. We also looked at an 18-month window. The campaign ran for 3 months, but we said, let's look out over 18 months. And now, instead of just looking at account openings, let's look at new customers to the bank. Did we actually, with the movable middle strategy, bring in new customers? That's the bar chart on the right. You have a lift in the incrementality. The number of new customers brought in per, ad impression was an index between 140 and 240. That's new customers. So whether you're looking for short-term results or you're looking for new customers, which is more about a longer-term strategy, the movable middle really seems to deliver. Now, when Amico at TransUnion, great analyst, presented this findings to us, we said, Amico, this is brilliant, but you need to go one step further. You need to do a bake-off and show us what a movable middle strategy delivers versus a strategy off your audiences built around demographics, built around heaviness of category buying, built around conquesting. Okay, movable middle does well. Does it do better? Does better than broad reach, but how about the other stuff that people do? And these are those results. So you see the movable middle is 2 to 2.6 times greater than broad reach. But even if you go after heavy category buyers, that's only a little better than average. If you go after the demos that you might think of as your sweet spot, that's actually worse. In this case, it was worse than broad reach. The worst strategy of all, and I'm sure you've all done it, the worst strategy of all is conquesting, is going after those people of no interest in your brand who are committed customers of other brands Could be one, could be many, but not you. Going after conquesting delivered an index of 60, if I can read that correctly. So, I mean, this is actual implementation stuff of how a media plan can be constructed around this fundamental insight of the hypersensitivity of movable middles. And as I showed on that slide, so far in 11 out of 11 case studies, we see hypersensitivity. I've been in marketing for a long time. I've been in modeling of data for a long time. I've never seen 100% hit rates in marketing. So far, now I know it might be early in the season, talking baseball, but so far, the movable middles really looks like the closest thing to a sure thing in marketing. But anyway, that's me talking. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to ask the panel for their impressions, and I'd like to start with Michelle from Ally, because it's your data. And you did see this once before, but it was very recent when you saw it.
Yeah, last week.
So can you kind of recreate, like, what went through your mind as you saw this new information?
A lot of things. I mean, we've been working with y'all on this study in particular. We ran it almost 2 years ago at this point. And so the fact that we keep still getting new insights and deeper insights out of this work is truly amazing. But it gave us a lot of credit for the strategies that we've been putting in place by bringing some of our execution in-house so that we have visibility. From a regulated industry, we're not necessarily great about sharing first-party data outside of our walls. So we had been working towards, how are we, a smaller bank, not necessarily punching above our weight in our category, going to make the most efficient use of the dollars that we have. And so we've been really excited to see that some of the things that we thought gut-wise were worthwhile put into practice are actually panning out in the data where we can say, this is why we are gaining a lot of efficiencies through those executions.
Yeah, now Kay, obviously it's not your data, but I'm sure your mind is extrapolating, and think. So what, from Kroger's point of view, and specifically we worked with you with respect to the e-com business, what are your thoughts as you look at these new data?
Yeah, so we decided to do this pilot because we were actually inspired by Ally's results. And coming from Kroger, and I think as most folks know, we know our data quite well. We have a great deal of first-party data that we can work with. We are able to invest, in significant ways across all channels, leveraging that first-party data. We identified those who we believe we have the right to win with, so what we would have defined as our version of movable middles, and normally activate against those. And to me, this was an interesting opportunity. Should we be refining those audiences even further based on their propensity and brand favorability towards Kroger? And so we thought it was worth a pilot to test. So we did do it as a part of our e-com holiday campaign a couple of years back, and it was shared earlier on Monday, I think, or Tuesday, by Tom Duncan, Linda Lee from Campbell. So Tom's with Kroger, Linda Lee's from Campbell's. And we were just so excited to see the results. We were surprised by the returns that we were seeing, and we were excited because it just gave us additional insights, and also validated that while we know a lot about our customers already, there is additional insights that we can layer on to further refine how we activate against our audiences to drive greater returns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. I have to shade my eyes to be able to see you guys. So they both did a study that we call Brand as Performance, but in the Brand as Performance study, we include the movable middle questions that are required so we can test the framework. So Vass ran a panel yesterday about brand as performance. Can I see from a show of hands how many saw Vass's session yesterday? Yeah, great. So just keep in mind that this is kind of like a little bit of a yin and yang. The brand as performance is more about a strategy for brand growth long term and what a healthy brand has to look like. And this is more about the media implementation part of it. So if any of you want to hear more about how these things kind of connect, you know, Vass and I will, or I see Vass in the front, we certainly can talk with any of you. Now, going back to the panel, can you, what was like the biggest aha from the movable middle results? I mean, even going back to the original wave, and not just maybe in terms of targeting, but even in terms of maybe platform or channel choices. Did it affect your thinking there?
I think there were so many learnings coming out of that. And we, just as a little background on Ally, we had taken a lot of media execution in-house right before we did the study. So I think we had the playbook that we were running off of in a do no harm kind of way to transition, but wanted to see what we could do to push efficiencies further. So, you know, I think the biggest initial learning was that we weren't totally off pace. And I think Andrea, our CMO, says it well, that like as marketers, we have these thoughts, gut feelings, a good understanding of a balance that you need both brand and performance tactics. But I think the biggest learning our whole team took away, and luckily we've had a great partnership with TransUnion for a while and had a lot of MTA data, but it was just to say things that are helping driving favorability or mid-funnel or awareness ultimately help drive that conversion bottom line. And so we do need a healthy mix of both. And we can't just pull the plug on one tactic if we're trying to throttle up or throttle down. It's about finding that balance, and it's the media, it's the tactic, it's the platform, it's the audience, working all together to do that.
Now, actually, let me take the question, let me throw away the list here and let me ask another question.
Yeah.
So Kay, I know, of course, with Kroger, you have tremendous data assets, but there are other publishers that you want to work with, and some of them are more, let's say, easy to work with in terms of pushing lists, you know, that would be pre-curated based on these concepts or some of the other. So I wonder, might you start to favor a little bit more those that are a little more open in terms of receiving ID lists the way you want to, you know, traffic, or what are your thoughts?
You just opened that door, didn't you, to have that conversation?
I sure did. I told you I'm throwing this away.
Yeah, well, you know, and I appreciate that so many people here were actually here for the Brandonomics conversation, so I feel like this is the right conversation to be had. These things do take work, you know. It's not like you turn on the light switch and these things magically appear. It does require a lot of coordination across cross-functional teams to bring these kinds of programs to life. And now we do utilize our first-party data quite a lot. We have a great media agency, our Dentsu partners. They do a great job in helping to extend those audiences for us. We have great data flowing out of the M1 platform that does give us additional rounds out the knowledge of our customer insights, but we aren't necessarily applying that filter of brand favorability as a part of it. And so it's an extra step. And I think the challenge for us is now, how do we operationalize something at scale, you know, and getting the buy-in of all the cross-functional teams. And I suspect for Ally as well as for us, you know, when we first do these kinds of programs, it is a pilot, you know, and you do it at a smaller scale. And the hope is, if it performs well, as I think our two pilots did, it does give us enough incentive to take back to our teams and say, hey, let's do this at a broader scale. But what would need to be true for us to execute this in a streamlined, operationally efficient way that doesn't burden with additional costs in order to execute?
So,
If I may on that.
yeah, sure.
Bill,
Yeah.
I think you were talking about just extra steps, right? And I think that was our second aha moment. It was that we needed to figure out a way to regularly measure favorability and how we're getting that information, not just at enterprise level, but every tactic along the way. And so that has been kind of our phase 2 of taking some of these learnings, was not only leveraging an enterprise brand lift and favorability type metric across the entire funnel of what we execute. So even stuff that is a display banner that's going through programmatic gets a layer of that. And then also partnering with some of the more walled gardens and social to say, we want a way to measure brand lift at the tactic, at the creative level, at the audience level for everything, so that we can continue to try to find out where in these gaps we can lean in for efficiencies with the people that are in that movable middle framework. So it was a pretty sizable lift, but it's, again, proof of concept, and then all of the work going into how do we continue to operationalize it over and over again.
Right.
Yeah, and I couldn't emphasize more what Michelle just called out. You need to find willing partners who are willing to go down this journey with you.
Yeah. So, Kay, you opened up maybe even a bigger door.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I'm going to come back to you to follow up on it. You know, the way this stuff works, you know, you develop complicated study design, you find something important, but it's a little complicated to explain, right? And we present it to you, and we kind of not only tell you what we found, we tell you a little bit about how the sausage was made, you know, so you have comfort with it. But we can't be there for all the conversations that you need to have. As you pointed out, you need to work with different teams within Kroger and you within Ally, and you need to work with the ecosystem that you've built of other organizations that have some kind of network partnering relationship. So can you tell me, how comfortable are you guys in talking about this brand, this performance, or movable middle stuff? Because if we don't make it something that a narrative you're comfortable with, then we've, you know, kind of failed, right? So tell us a little bit about, you know, how comfortable you are, maybe a little bit about how you explain it, especially to finance, who's not even marketing, you know, although some finance people are, you know, more marketing oriented. So how do you guys talk about this? Whoever wants to go first.
Sure, I could start. It's taken us time to get there. I would say it's been a couple of years for us to establish our foundation of a test and learn framework that the entire marketing organization is behind. Within our media team itself and with Dentsu, we have a 70-20-10 framework that we utilize. We call it an innovation framework, where 10% of our budgets we dedicated to new test and learns, new white spaces, things we've never tried before. They lean more towards things that are measurable, and so much of our innovation is trying to connect the dots to true business impact. And so for us, it's a pretty easy thing to get the other groups on board, because we are all highly motivated to deliver on, you know, we have quite aggressive goals to meet. And in order for us to do that, we just firmly believe we have to lean into our test and learn agenda, be willing to experiment, you know, in these ways. Our buys and our strategies are structured in a way that they can easily capture these kinds of opportunities. And a key learning for us over time is you got to bring your finance partner along. So we do have our marketing controller, who is now part of that journey with us. We bring him in early. He's seeing these results in the early readouts, in the mid-campaign readouts, in the final readouts. He's asking a lot of questions. And what he's helping us to do is to translate our very media-centric terminology, which nobody else in Kroger understands, right? Except for marketing and media, and translate it to terminology that the organization can readily understand. We are not there yet. I feel like we are getting closer there, but he's a willing partner.
So I've been using Duolingo a lot because I study language. It sounds like you need new languages built into Duolingo specifically, so marketing has terminology that connects with finance and vice versa. How about you, Michelle?
I don't want to harken back to yet another presentation, but Rex had a great one right before lunch, if you caught it, about translating things from marketing into finance. And I know there was a slide in there that we've used quite frequently with our C-suite and the finance partners, where we were showing that trade-off between short-term gain long-term detriment, and it translated directly into accounts, and it's a nice little visual that's quick and easy, but I think a lot of the framework that we've had here with brand multipliers has helped us walk into those conversations where either we've got extra budget to spend and how do we want to divvy it up, or sometimes you get an ask end of quarter, end of year to make a cut or reserve. And I think in previous roles, not necessarily while I was at Ally, it was very much a directive of the business goal needs to slow down, and therefore we're going to cut from conversion tactics. Or overall, we just need a little bit less, but the business goal is still firm, so we'll cut from brand tactics. And we're using this as a real framework to talk about the trade-offs between and how we're balancing across, instead of saying that it's just one that gets yanked or the other. And so, yeah, a lot of those things have translated into goals and presentations that we're talking with finance when we set goals up front and as we're going throughout the year.
So Kay, is there one slide or one sound bite that you use where the finance guy goes, "Oh, of course, I get that"? Is there one specific unlock that you would want to share?
So much of what we do, we ultimately measure as incremental sales growth. And so the more that we can tie it directly in a single slide, we spent this much, and this is the incremental sales growth without question that we drove, and these are the new customers that we acquired without question. But we do need to connect that as directly as we can to our own business systems and make sure that those numbers, we are seeing the same trend lines there. We don't have that magical one slide ready to share yet. So that is why we're having to bring our finance partner in, because he's going to help us make that translation.
But I think the point you make is really important, that maybe before you get that one slide, you have to move the organization to a measurement culture.
Yes.
That it has to buy into the importance of it and the way it's going to be done, and everyone, signs up that we've all agreed this is rigorous, this is appropriate, and we're going to look at these results. Now, I do have one more question for you guys. I see we have another 5 minutes or so, but I hope everybody in the audience that you guys take out your smartphones, because we're going to show you a slide or two with a QR code. So if you want to learn more about the work that was done, also TransUnion will be publishing a white paper on this analysis that they did. And this work all really emanated from the marketing attribution think tank that the MMA regularly runs with its members. So I'm going to show you a slide or two. Please feel free to take a picture of the QR codes. So we have 2 of them. Take 2 pictures and we'll figure it out later. I think this one is more about, making sure that you sign up for any news that we have available to share with the industry. And the MMA is a trade association, so we really pretty freely share all of this. So we'd love to have you sign up to register to learn more, and you would get whatever white papers get produced in this whole audit trail of information. So this is the first slide. And the second one is really about the MMA and its larger program of marketing analytics. So please feel free to scan this. I'll leave this one up for a minute, and just want to ask you guys in the 3 minutes or so that we have left, do you have any parting thoughts about Movable Middles or Brandon's performance, that you'd like to share with everyone here? How can you help, move their thinking to kind of some of the ahas that you've seen? What would you like to share, guys?
I would say for us, I think the conversation, or regularly having the conversation around, there may not just be one job to be done for a particular tactic, a particular creative. Sure, things can aim that way or be, in our case, amplified. Brand drives more favorability than performant creative converts. But I really feel like it has been a huge unlock for us this year in bringing all of those data signals and not just bucketing things as like, this is the awareness effort, or this is the branding effort, this is the conversion effort, and trying to make sure that we're bringing every data point to help inform and point the arrow, because one KPI isn't the ultimate North Star for getting this right. It's about driving the business outcomes, but there's so many pieces that lead up and stair-step our way to that. So I would say my biggest takeaway, or a thing I would advise, is just not to put things in its own corner, but try to see how they're all translating together and bring that data along for the ride.
Okay.
Yeah, so for me, it's going to be bringing your finance partners along on that journey, whether you bring them in early, help them to understand the work that you are doing and what you are trying to drive. And then when they hear that all of this is in service of trying to drive true incremental growth for the company, they love that, right? And then so they're willing to go on that journey with you and set aside dollars. You have a framework, have an innovation framework where you just proactively set aside a set amount of a percentage of your budget to do these kind of innovation pilots. Because once you formalize that within your marketing organization, everybody just gets on board and they recognize it for what it is and share the results frequently, amongst the group, because everybody wants to see they put effort into this. And while the MMA team and all their brilliance really helps and actually does a lot of the back analytics work on this and really tests it out, 6 ways, 8 ways, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
You come away feeling really good about the results and that they have been truly vetted. And that's the kind of work that I feel like is worth bringing back to the organization to prove the value, prove that marketing truly is a sales or a growth driver for the organization. And these are the ways that we are really leaning in to prove that out.
Yeah. So I'd like everyone to help thank the panelists and all the hard work that went in from everybody who worked on this. Thank you so much.